Okay, so looking at the brake caliper with the stub axle, I have noticed that the bolts, the mounting bolts for the caliper, are situated a little bit further in than I was thinking. So the space is actually going to be determined by, in actual fact, the bracket, the mounting bracket for the brake caliper. I can space the disc for the caliper over there. So is those two mounting holes, one there and one there, attached to a metal plate, which then is welded onto that stub axle. So that's my new spacer will be there, rather than based on just the front end of it clearing the wheel. So looking at the big picture is what we needed to do here. I'll make some adjustments now. So the next thing I'm going to need to do is to design a bracket that mounts, takes two 8mm bolts here, that then welds onto this plate, and it needs to be appropriately positioned so that the disc and everything sits nicely. So it'll sit somewhere, obviously, like, I don't know, doesn't really matter what angle I put it on, I don't suppose. I might just put it at the top, I guess, when I make the mounting bracket. So we'll go and design a mounting bracket. Okay, so here we are doing some really high-tech design work. A bit of paper stuck on the front of the disc. And what I've done, as you can see, is I've drawn a quick sketch. So I've placed the caliper over the top of the disc here, and drawn just quickly inside the holes there to indicate where the 8mm bolt goes, and then just a quick sketch sort of coming down, and I'll probably come up and around down here and up here. So I'll draw that up in CAD to scale. Essentially, I'll take a photograph of this and then pull the photograph into CAD, scale this disc to 22 centimeters. Thanks for picking me up on that one, Ken. And then get it all scaled up, draw this piece up in CAD, as I said, print it out on paper, and then cut it out and see if it looks like it's going to fit. So the next thing is to take a photograph and get some drawings done. So this is the drawing that I've done. I've dragged my photograph in, scaled it to 22 centimeters across, marked the center point, drawn in the stub axle, so I measured that up, 45.5 millimeters across. I've drawn that in. And put in my I made these 9mm circles here. The bolts are 8mm, just to give it a little bit of slack. And then I've drawn in where I think my metal edge should be. So this is the part here. It's now highlighted that I'll be cutting out on the plasma cutter, and that should, if it obviously doesn't work, I'll just move things a little bit, but it should work to hold the caliper on the stub axle if all goes to plan. So that's the photograph with my feet there. Oh, there you go, another project I'm doing for my brother. He wants a Harley Davidson sign, so I'm going to laser cut that for him, plasma cut that for him. Anyway, what's happening? So here's the part that I printed out and cut out, just made out of paper. So it should, I'll just slide over the axle there. We just sit it there. It looks pretty much like it's lining up with the holes. It's not crashing into any parts there, so It looks like it should work. So from here I'll basically just cut one of those out on the plasma cutter and we'll see how it goes. So here's the part ready for cutting. So I'll just simulate the tool path for the cut. Cuts the two circles inside and then the outside of the actual bracket. Alrighty, here we go. The next part, we've had a bit of dye to the water there, so it looks a nice blue colour now, so it's ready to go. If we look at the cutter here, that's the part we're going to cut. So here's the part, all cut. Again, a little bit of dross on the back, but all that stuff it pretty much just flicks off. It's not hard to get off. So cleaning up these things is pretty easy. Alrighty, so next we'll see if that fits, and that's the brake caliper holder. So here's the part cut out, all cleaned up. It seems to fit onto our brake caliper quite nicely. So we know we've got the shape right. But I've been having thoughts about how I'm going to get the steering to work, so I may just adjust the design a little, doing a different steering bearing mechanism, so that fits in there fine. So that's fine for the basic design of it. So what I'm going to do is, here's my axle, is that fits over there, but I think I'm going to change the way I do this. I want to, this is the support arm material, some left over from the first bike. I'm going to put bearings in. I'm going to use the tapered bearings. So I'm going to turn up in the lathe essentially a block of metal, tapered bearings on both sides, and I'll plasma cut a hole in a pipe so that the top of the bearing sits flush with the top of the pipe. And then I'll chop this off at the end here, and I'm going to use some 8mm 50mm across metal bar essentially to make a U-shaped bracket, and then I'll put a bolt through and that'll be my steering arm. So I've got these 7mm bearings that should provide enough strength to hold the bike top and bottom to make the bracket, and then from there this will be mounted onto the end again, so I'll just have to make this hole a little bit bigger and to also compensate for the extra bit of metal up top here. but I've got the basic shape, which is good. And I'll put a steering arm coming out of the top bit as well, so the steering arm will come up on this angle here. So I'll show you a CAD drawing shortly. Here's the front end of the bike. You can see the section of pipe I'm going to cut away there. So that will contain the front bearings. So if we pop that into the drawing, so that'll sit there with your bearing. There's your adapter plate. So I'll have my tapered bearings in there. And there. The spacer plate is there, which we've already cut. These are the spacers that I'll need to ensure that my disc caliper's located in the right spot. And the front rotor, which will get bolted on to those spacers, and the front axle. So it'll look something like this. I'll chop off the stub axle. We'll weld it onto the plate there. This is your steering arm, which goes back to this part of the bike here, which is where your steering comes from when it comes down the column here. The brake bracket, which we've already designed, I'll just need to make that a bit bigger to fit over this 50mm. So I'll probably just cut another one. I guess that's the beauty of a laser cutter. A plasma cutter, we can just cut things again if we make mistakes. So this piece here will be welded as one solid piece. I'll just bring it up. So this will be one solid piece. The brake arm, this U-shaped, the axle will be welded on, and I'll weld the brake caliper on as well. On the previous bike I also had another arm coming out here, which was where I connected the steering damper, but I'm not sure how effective that was at the end of the day, so we'll leave that for another time. So next part we'll get made is I'll chop off the axle, cut up these bits of metal here. I'll probably cut a hole through the end plate here, and then we'll weld the axle on both sides, have all this welded together, and I'll also turn up on the lathe the center bracket that holds the bearings there. So that's the bit we'll get working on next.